Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Captain's Table. I am your host, Captain B-Nard, here to give you guys a review and reflection of the RoDL3. That is the draft league that I've been participating in as of late. As you can probably tell by the fact that this video is occurring right now, unfortunately, we did not make the playoffs of this league. If you guys have been following the Wi-Fi battles, you will know that I needed a specific team to lose their match in the 12th and final week of the regular season in order for the Philadelphia Pidgeys to make the playoffs, and unfortunately that team did end up getting the win, so we are out of the tournament. But it was a good ride while it lasted. Definitely a pretty up and down season, but gonna go ahead and talk about all of that right here and now. As per the usual when I get done with a draft league. We're going to do this pretty much the same way that we always do, where I'm going to give you guys kind of some general stats about the league, and going to go through the evolution of my team throughout the league, and also the performance of the Pokemon, and just kind of some overall thoughts about the experience in the league as a whole, also going through the individual games to some extent. We're going to go ahead and get started with talking about the performance of the Philadelphia Pidgeys in general in this league. As you guys know, I have not been in a league in quite a while, well over a year since before, joining this league, and the last league that I was in Gen 7, so that is definitely going to play a factor. The jump to Gen 8 and the changes in the gameplay is definitely going to play a pretty big factor in the outcome of this draft league. We did end up finishing, as you can tell by the lovely thumbnail, we ended up finishing 5-7 in this league. So not a great record, not a terrible record either, I will say, but definitely not quite as good as I would have liked to do. Obviously, I would have liked to make it to the playoffs at least, but unfortunately, it was not to be, and but that record was good enough to land us ninth place in the tournament. So the fabled spot directly under the spot that you need to qualify for something in any tournament. We were so close, but yet so far. So pretty much the top of the bottom here, which again I'm kind of okay with. But definitely would have liked to do a little bit better. That's kind of how we did. I'm going to go ahead and take you guys through the weeks and the evolution of the team then here. We can, if you guys haven't been watching the weekly battles, or if maybe you forgot, we'll go ahead and revisit all that, and I'll kind of, make some comments about all that. All right, here we have a shot of the team that I drafted originally here for the RoDL3. As you can see, we drafted Scissor as number 1. Then we had Gudra as number 2, the team captain de facto of the Philadelphia Pidgeys. Once again, have to mention the only Pokemon that I have drafted on every single rendition of every single Philadelphia Pidgeys team. Team captain right there, Gudra, always coming through for us. And then we have the Alolan Ninetales third, the Seismitoad fourth, which was a Philadelphia Pidgey from the NGDL3. Then we had Boltund fifth, Poltegeist sixth, Octillery seventh, Alolan Persian eighth, Trevenant ninth, which is another former Philadelphia Pidgey from the NGDL3, and then Drampa at 10th. As I mentioned, this was the team for the weeks 1 through 3 of the league, and talking a little bit about those games, we're going to start off obviously with week 1, and in week 1 we played A13 in a game that we got a 4-0 victory. It was a pretty solid game, pretty back and forth, definitely closer than the score would indicate, and in this game, Poltegeist put in a lot of work, as I recall, but definitely everybody did their part to get us the win. It was a pretty solid game through and through. even in winning 4-0, the game went right up to the timer, which is something that is going to be a reoccurring theme here, unfortunately, as we'll get into talking about these games, throughout this entire tournament, essentially, because, as you all probably know, at this point, we only have a 20-minute game timer in Sword and Shield / Gen 8, so that definitely played a pretty sizable factor in this entire season of this draft league. So, but as far as that week one game goes, again, really solid game through and through. Don't really have too much else to say about it than that. But then we're going to get into our week two game, and that was against Frey, and this was a game that we lost 6-5. So there really wasn't a lot going on in this game. It was very stally, it was very time consuming, and it ran right up to the timer with only one Pokemon actually being eliminated. That was on my side, so that is the 6-5 loss for me. And so right away, already in week two, we're seeing the effects of the timer. In this game, so definitely, I don't know what would have happened had the timer not been a factor, but it was, again, score 6-5, so not a lot really going down in that game. A very slow-paced and stally game, which when you have a 20-minute timer isn't obviously very great. But yeah, it kind of was what it was. So moving along to week three, we had a 3-1 victory versus Checkmate. So thing to note about this was we had a coach that quit the league, so this guy was the replacement for that. So he got to immediately draft a completely brand new team to face us, which is another thing that I think might bear some revision in future seasons of this league, because I think that it might be a little bit lopsided to have new coaches coming in being able to draft an entirely new team. I think it would be a little more fair to the existing coaches if they were to cut that down to maybe half the team you had to keep, and you could replace half the team on your first week. But nonetheless, this was still a victory for us, which was pretty nice. Alolan Ninetales put in quite a bit of work, if I remember correctly, in this one, and it was a pretty close match, obviously, but we were able to get that win at the timer. So a pretty solid match through and through. Don't really have too much else to say about it other than that. So that is going to bring us to week four, and this is the week that we went ahead and made our first transaction of the season. And that was, as you can see, to go ahead and drop Drampa and add Wigglytuff to the team. So the reason that I did this is because I kind of, to be honest, at the end of the draft, I wasn't really crazy about drafting Drampa. I just kind of did just because I had the point cap to do it, but I didn't really have any serious plans of using Drampa just because the dragon niche was already well covered by Goodra, and I couldn't really see a scenario in which I wasn't going to bring Goodra. So I actually did want to draft Wigglytuff on the original version of this team, but unfortunately it was drafted away. I think the round that I was going to grab it, somebody grabbed it a few spots before me, so unfortunately was not able to grab it, but I was able to grab it this week because I forget if either that was the coach that dropped out of the league or if he just dropped Wigglytuff or another coach dropped it for something else. I don't remember, but one of those two things happened, which allowed me to be able to draft Wigglytuff myself. So I did that. I wanted another fairy type on the team, more of a bulky fairy, since Alolan Ninetales is obviously a good fairy, but not a bulky fairy. So I wanted something a little more bulky. Plus, I wanted a Pokemon that had some type of either defiant or competitive like ability to punish opponents for trying to either use stat lowering moves such as Intimidate or Sticky Web or stuff like that. So that was I was happy with that pickup. Unfortunately, in week four here, we ended up taking a 4-0 loss in our game, which was versus Jacob. And yeah, that was kind of a rocky loss there. I believe, if I remember correctly, um, yeah, I'm trying to remember. But that might have been the week. Yeah, I'm kind of drawing a blank on that game, that week four game. But we kind of we got whacked in this one essentially 4-0. So we did get we were handed a pretty rough loss in this week. That was kind of yeah, it was kind of a little demoralizing, to not to be dramatic, but it was a little bit demoralizing. And yes, I believe this was the week actually. Now that I'm remembering it, this was the week that we got swept by Reggie Alecki, I believe. So that was a pretty tough loss for the team to come back from. He kind of played his cards right and got me in a position where Reggie Alecki could just kind of run wild on me, and yeah, that was really unfortunate. So you know, rough loss, but those do happen in the league sometimes. So well, even out of the league as well. So, but in any event, that is going to bring us to week five. So, and again, we are going to make another transaction this week. And that transaction was actually to go ahead and drop our Octillery and our Alolan Persian and grab Barrascuda. So this was actually a very well. This reason was made twofold, but the main reason that this was made was because for our week five game. The opponent had a pretty powerful Rain Core, I believe, and I wanted the opportunity to use Barrascuda to kind of abuse his own Rain Core against him, even though he actually anticipated that and didn't end up bringing the rain support on his team that week, which was a good move in one way, but I think the lack of having that kind of cost him against me. Because in that game, as we'll get into in a second, it kind of went my way. But so I ended up dropping, as far as the team change goes, I ended up dropping Octillery and Alolan Persian because I kind of, with Octillery, I did really want to get an opportunity to use it more, but unfortunately, that thing was in a situation where it was essentially the most expendable Pokemon that I had, and I really, really wanted to get the Barrascuda on the team at this point. So it was kind of like nothing else was more expendable than that. And also with the Alolan Persian, again, it was a Pokemon like Drampa that I actually never used. And although, unlike Drampa, I kind of did have plans to use the Alolan Persian, but I just never really got the opportunity to use it. So at this point in week five, I kind of figured, well, I'm probably not going to use it. So yeah, so that was the reasoning behind that. So that brings us to the week five game where we actually got the win 6-2 versus Ahmed was our opponent. And yeah, like I said, his team had a really strong rain core to it, and he chose not to bring it because he didn't want me to use the Barrascuda to abuse his own rain core, or at least I assume that was the reason. And I think that ended up hurting him because that was a pretty central feature of his team that he chose not to bring. So, but in this game, the real star of this game, though, was Poltegeist, actually, that really, really put in work, actually secured after a setup with not only a Shell Smash, but I believe two weak armor speed boosts as well. Actually scored all four of the kills in this game, so Poltegeist really ran wild in this game. This was something that I was really trying to do or trying to set up, and one of the really main reasons that I drafted Poltegeist to begin with, because I wanted to do that. And I was able to do that, so that was really awesome. Unfortunately, this match really should have been a 6-0, but again, the timer came into play in this game because he was kind of able to stall out the timer and only take the 6-2 loss because time ran out. But yeah, it definitely would have been a 6-0 if not for the timer. But I'm not terribly upset about that. But yeah, it definitely would have been that. So again, the timer, coming into play, just kind of another example of that. So, but that is going to bring us to week 6, and that was actually another pretty rough loss here. So, that was a 5-0 loss versus Henry in week 6 here, and yeah, this was another pretty demoralizing loss, actually. And this one, I don't I can't really point to I guess one thing. There was just a lot of I'd say if I had to, just the team that he had just really matched up really well against mine on paper, and he did play very well, and yeah, it just kind of was what it was. Don't have anything too crazy to say about it, but another pretty harsh loss. Yeah, and it does happen. That unfortunately, sometimes you just get outmatched on paper in these leagues, especially. That can happen, really in Pokemon in general. But when you have a very specific set of Pokemon that you have to stick to, it's probably more likely, I would say. So yeah, that was definitely a rough loss, and that unfortunately kind of started the losing streak that really, I think, in hindsight, ended up costing us the season as far as making the playoffs. Because then that is going to feed into week 7, where we took another loss here. This one was a 4-1 loss versus Al. And again, another game where we didn't have the best time on paper against this team. But yeah, it was unfortunately just a situation where opponent prepped well, played well, and in addition to having a disadvantage on paper, there really wasn't a lot that we could do. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of happens, and it was, again, the downward spiral here, the losing streak in the middle of the season here, and so that is going to carry over actually into making our final transactions here of the season, and that is going to be in week 8. So as you can see, we made a double transaction this week for our final transactions of the season. That is, we dropped off the Poltegeist and the Barraskewda in favor of grabbing Gallade and Rotom Wash. So this was actually probably the hardest decision that I made all season as far as transactions or anything like that goes. And the reason for that is I really didn't want to give up Poltegeist specifically because I really wanted to see if I could get more sweeps with it, and it is a very premier Shell Smash sweeper, and I really wanted to do more with it. But unfortunately, I kind of learned the hard way with those last couple of losses that Poltegeist is kind of a one-trick pony, and it is, if you see it coming a mile away, it's easier to prep for, obviously, by a mile. So yeah, I kind of decided that I wanted to have some stuff that was a little more versatile. So I was trying to save the season at that point, try to get myself out of that losing streak. And unfortunately, it didn't work in this specific week, in week 8, because we ended up taking a 4-3 loss in week 8. That was a battle against Goose. And so, yeah, this one was another very timer-oriented loss, unfortunately. Again, losing 4-3 due to the timer. And so, again, it was a situation where, you don't know what's going to happen. That's the thing, is because you could be behind by a little, you could be behind by a lot in a battle, and, given the time, you could come back. The game could definitely swing, and that did happen not every time, but a significant amount of times back in generations past where we had that 60-minute timer. But unfortunately, with again the 20-minute timer in Generation 8, just not really a thing. So yeah, definitely another heavily timer influenced loss here, and again it just kind of was what it was. But yeah, so I was still happy though with my transactions though, because I feel like picking up Gallade, I really wanted a strong fighting type, which was something I felt that the team was lacking a little bit. And so I also wanted Rotom Wash as a very versatile powerhouse, bulky pivot, you name it, trick, very strong Pokemon. So yeah, I was happy with those pickups, and I thought it was the best possible way that I could try to save the season. So yeah, that is going to bring us to week 9, and that week we actually secured. We finally snapped the losing streak that week, and we secured a 5-0 big win over Chris. So this was a game that we really just kind of controlled the game from top to bottom. The combination of the pivots from Scissor and Rotom, I think, because that was kind of the I guess combination you would say that I was going for in building this team back to try and give myself the best possible shot at winning or making playoffs. So those combinations really helped us just constantly keeping the momentum going. And then Gudra actually put in a lot of work in this game as well. So definitely really happy to get that win. That was, or so I thought, kind of trying to get us back on the right track there. So, unfortunately, though, that is going to bring us to week 10, and once again, we are going to be taking the loss here. This was a 5-4 loss versus Sam, not the same Sam that we've seen in the past on the channel. As a side note, either both in battles and on the Captain's Table podcasts, this is a different Sam, but. Nonetheless, yeah, this was a pretty slow-paced battle. Again, not a lot going on here. Only, 2 KOs on my side, 1 on the opponent's side. So obviously that leads to the 5-4 score in favor of my opponent. And yeah, just another slow-paced game. And unfortunately, those slow-paced games are just really killers, honestly. This was another situation that this coach actually was a replacement coach for another coach. So I believe they, if I remember correctly, I believe it was the week prior to this week that this coach came into the league. So again, they were able to draft a 100% new team, which, again, if I'm being honest, I think is, maybe needs to be adjusted in the future, so as to make it a little more fair to the coach that is currently in the league. And just to be clear, my argument from that perspective is, so I think that it's a little unfair to the coaches that are already in the league, because now if their opponent is drafting a brand new team, fully new team of 9, 10, 11 Pokemon, whatever, they are easily able to, or much more easily able to, prep or game plan their opponent's team, because they know their opponent's full team. Now, you could also make the argument on that note that they have a much more limited Pokemon pool to choose from, which is true, but at the same time, there's still a lot of viable options out there, even with the limitations with other people having their teams drafted. So, again, it's not a huge sticking point for me, but something that I think should probably be changed going forward. But nonetheless, yeah, another loss there for us in week 10. So that is going to go ahead and take us to week 11, and that is actually going to be a rematch versus Frey, which was the opponent that we faced back in week 2, and he beat us in week 2. Unfortunately, he defeated us in week 11 as well. The score was 4-2 this time, so more stuff happened in this game, and in this one, I will say, I think I probably cost myself this game. I feel like I made a couple of predictions that really didn't turn out, and I could have, if I would have played a little better. I think I actually, because I kind of leapt out to a lead in the beginning of this game, and I feel like if I would have made some better predictions, I would have been able to get the win in this one, but unfortunately I kind of lost it toward the middle and the end of the game. Yeah, and that just kind of led to the defeat. So this one was technically a timer loss as well, although I don't know that I really necessarily blame the loss on the timer this time around. I actually don't, because we were definitely not in the driver's seat toward the end of the game. So probably wouldn't have been able to bring it back with as much time as we needed, or if the game would have gone to completion rather. But just kind of was what it was. Once again. And finally, that will bring us to week 12, the final week, where we had a rematch with Checkmate, the opponent from week 3, and we were able to secure a 5-0 win in this game, which was incredible. Another huge win for us. And yeah, so in this game, just played very well, honestly. I was very focused because this was do or die, essentially. I needed to win, and I needed to win big to even give myself a chance of making the playoff spot. And so, yeah, we delivered on that. We definitely had a lot of luck as well, specifically in the beginning of the game with some status conditions off of moves activating. But yeah, we Ninetales, Alolan put in a lot of work once again on this one. Yeah, so it was a solid game. Played very well and very proud of that. So going out on a high note at the end of the season, but as I mentioned at the top of the video, unfortunately it was not enough to secure us a playoff spot because the team that we needed to lose did in fact win. So yeah. So that takes us to the end of the season, ending the season at a record of 5-7. So we're going to move on to some Pokemon stats here. I will say briefly, though, that I did have fun with the season, and I guess I'll talk a little bit more about that after we go through the Pokemon stats. But yeah, I did have fun with the season as well, despite these qualms that I'm bringing up here. So moving on to my Pokemon stats, though. Here are the stats of all the Pokemon I had remaining on the team at the end of the season. So you're going to see 3 numbers here. It is going to be a usage to kill to death ratio. So first number is going to be the amount of games that I brought the Pokemon in. Second number is going to be the amount of kills that Pokemon scored. And third number is going to be the amount of times that Pokemon fainted. So as you can see, Goodra and Scizor, top of the heap here, brought those two every week. Those were pretty much the cornerstones of the team here. Strong Dragon and Steel combination. Really, really good. And yeah, they were the cornerstones of the team, brought every week again. And then not far behind that, actually, we have the Alolan Ninetales, where brought that all but 1 week, actually, did I bring the Alolan Ninetales, so 11 times. And then we have the Seismitoad. I brought that 10 times, so all but 2 weeks. So those were pretty much the staples of the team right there. So those 4 Pokemon appeared in basically every game. So those were really the standards, I guess, the standard bearers of the RoDL3 Philadelphia Pidgeys. Which again I was pretty happy with. I really like that combination, especially the Goodra and the Scizor combination. I'm very happy with that, and yeah, so just kind of filters down from there. So we have a pretty stark jump down then next to the Gallade, the Rotom Wash, and the Boltund. I brought all of those guys 5 times each, and the Gallade kind of almost, even though it technically didn't, trade wise, but it kind of replaced the Boltund as a physical sweeper or potential physical sweeper on the team. So Boltund I really brought more toward the the early part of the season, and then toward the end of the season, Gallade pretty much every week. Rotom Wash brought that guy, I believe, every week since I transacted for it. Just a great Pokemon overall. And then, of course, toward the bottom, we have the Wigglytuff and the Trevenant brought both twice each. So those were just kind of odds and ends to fill in for specific situations. I think with most teams, you're going to see a core of maybe 3 or 4 Pokemon that you're going to see every week. And then there's going to be a rotating core of like another couple Pokemon that you're going to see like every other week, and then some you're only going to see once or twice. So I think that's pretty typical of a draft league. So that was kind of the breakdown of, which Pokemon were coming to bat every week. And then I'm just going to throw up the Pokemon that I transacted away as their stats as well. So Poltegeist, obviously at the top of that. Um, Really good ratio. Brought that guy 5 times actually. And again, Poltegeist was kind of initially, a pretty big cornerstone of the team in the early going of the season. But again, I was kind of faced with a tough decision toward the end of the season to transact that guy away to try and grab some Pokemon that were a little more versatile than that to try and save my season. And unfortunately, it didn't quite pan out for me, but kind of was what it was. But yeah, Poltegeist still was a pretty good, powerhouse for the weeks that I did have it. And then Barraskewda put in a little bit of work as well. Octillery only brought it once, really didn't get to do anything with it because that was in one of those stally timer games that I had brought it, so didn't really get to do anything with it at all. And then the Alolan Persian and the Drampa actually did not bring those at all this season. But I think again that's not necessarily uncommon. Ideally, I would like to have brought every Pokemon at least once that I drafted, because if I didn't use it at all, kind of what was the point of drafting it, right? And that didn't quite work out, but kind of is what it is. So that is going to be about it for the season there. So I do want to make a few general comments about my time here in the Rocket Draft League Season 3. So overall, I did have a good time with this. This was my return to Draft League, or I should say, my not-so-triumphant return to Draft League after being on the shelf for a little over a year. I did have fun. I will say I'm a little disappointed. I thought that I could have done a little better than that. My goal when I enter Draft League is always to at least make the playoffs, and that didn't happen, obviously, although again, as I said, I would classify my performance as the top of the bottom here, making 9th place in the league. And I believe I was actually the only coach in the whole league to have a negative win-to-loss ratio, but still a positive kill-to-death ratio for my Pokemon total. I think mine ended at +3. So, yeah, that kind of speaks a little bit to what kind of games I was having. So, although I will say that I had a very mixed season in terms of results. So, I had about 3 or so games, I want to say, that were just like complete blowouts that I just, blew the opponent out and won. I had about another 3 games or so that were just, I got completely blown out by my opponent, and then I had a couple of close games where I won, a couple of close games where I lost, and then I had a few games that were, timer-induced losses. So that's probably the biggest, I guess, sticking point, if there would be a sticking point for me as far as the season goes, would be the timer-induced losses. So if I have any regrets, I would say that it's that maybe I didn't adjust myself accordingly to try and work with or around the timer as well as I should, definitely. which is a little bit of a regret, but at this point it is what it is. And if I do end up joining a future league that is, well, a future league at all in Sword and Shield, that is, definitely going to have to figure out more productive ways to work with or around the timer at 20 minutes. But yeah, definitely a little obviously frustrating to have those timer induced losses because statistically speaking, even one of those timer losses turning into a win of any kind would have been enough to kind of put me over the line and get me to the playoffs. So that's one way to look at it. But again, it kind of is what it is. This is something that, as a Pokemon player, I guess we all have to try and deal with, or get around in Sword and Shield. So, but yeah, despite that, I still had a good time, and I look forward to the future. I'm not, again, 100% sure if I'm going to join up the next season of this league or another league. I'm still kind of kicking it around in my head, so I guess we'll kind of see what happens. You guys will definitely find out about it one way or the other here. Yeah, I will say, again, my goal is always in draft leagues to at least make it to the playoffs, and having not done that does kind of suck a little bit. But I am pretty content that I went out on a high note, at least in week 12, with a nice win. And so, being the top of the bottom, essentially, as far as statistically speaking goes, in the league is kind of a silver lining. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the future. But for right now, I'm going to be going back to business as usual here on the channel. So I'm actually really excited to be rolling out new singles matches with a brand new team, which is something that I have not done in quite some time, even since before the league. So I'm going to be rolling that out for you guys pretty soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to be doing another couple new teams for singles, and then of course more episodes of the Captain's Table and all that good stuff. So again, like I said, return to business as usual here on the channel now that the league is over. So yeah, so I think that will about do it. So thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and or subscribe if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. So that's it, and we'll see you next time.